Does good news sell? You know, I always wonder, they should have a show called Good News. Yeah, you know, the good news.
Keep watching Good News Podcast for more awesome videos like what you see right here.
Okay, hey guys, how's it going? I honestly don't even know what number we're on anyways, but let's just get right to it. So, it's been a pretty busy week, not just for us, but around the world. For instance, you went to a convention not too long ago, huh? You want to talk about that?
Yeah, no, I actually just recently came back from a vendor show that was happening in... There was a bunch of different spots. First they had it in Squamish, and then Vancouver, Maple Ridge, Mission, and then it ended in Surrey. I was able to go on the last day, and it was the Pacific Northwest Growers vendor show, right? And it was like an area where people just came to discuss, you know, it was a lot of commercial companies and stuff that were about, like, you know, nutrients and stuff for growing marijuana. And that's something that we haven't really talked about that openly on the podcast before, right? And it's like something that I feel I should really kind of have given some attention to before. But, you know, you can probably attest to the fact that I've pretty much, you know, blazed before every single podcast, right?
He handles himself pretty well.
To get myself into that mindset where I'm not just
like people that smoke weed probably like, what a douchebag. Of course he handles himself well.
Yeah, I know, but like, I mean, it was something that for me, when I was studying in India, you know, I told you that I was in med school in India.
Yeah.
And during that time period, I started having, like, you know, some really bad problems with depression and anxiety and stuff. So,
yeah, as you do in med school, I'd imagine.
Yeah, and, you know, I have some stuff, like, that happens with family and stuff, you know, and, but obviously, you know, the history behind that. But I've been having, like, I've been having problems at the time, and obviously, doctors, their psychologists, did the exact same thing that most psychologists would do, is prescribe me, you know, some antidepressants or anti-anxiety meds, and they prescribed me Xanax, right?
Yeah.
And they prescribed, I believe it was 10 milligram pills, and like it was like 2 to 3 a day, depending on how, you know, how much stress, how much anxiety you felt, and like I was supposed to keep it down on a piece of paper, like keep, you know, a log of, like, you know, when there's peaks in my day of anxiety and everything. So they, you know, I got onto it. I started taking it in India, and then after a while, like with a lot of pills, you know, I had a bit of an addictive personality at the time. This is 3 years ago.
And you do develop a dependency, not just physical, but you have the chemical imbalance in the brain.
Exactly, right? And so that imbalance and all the dependency going into effect, I was also in a bad mind state. So like at one point, the pills were the only thing that were like kind of pulling me away from reality, right? So in a lot of ways, what people do is they'll drink and stuff so that they can step away from their worries and their sorrows and stuff.
Self-obliteration.
And it just kind of like, you know, dumbs everything out. And that's what I was like content being in that state of mind, right? And I was kind of smoking weed here and there, but I started, like, you know, I was on these meds. And then what happened was my dependency got to the point that instead of taking, you know, 2 to 3 a day, I was taking like 12 and beyond a day. Right, depending on.
Just to be clear, that's not unheard of for not just med students, but people in those circumstances.
Yeah,
you pop them like Tic Tacs.
And it's like something that you don't necessarily have the you know, the foresight to appreciate that, like, you know, your doctor can make a mistake, right? And people always think that, okay, my doctor went and prescribed this for me, that it has to be the right thing, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people go into pharmaceutical pills like that, and then they're unfortunately very addictive. And, you know, a lot of these things, like Oxycontin is like synthetic heroin, right?
Yeah.
So then, and that just goes through the market, like, you know, easily.
It's designed, honestly, I think it's designed to be that way. And if you look at the way these pharmaceutical companies structure themselves and their product, that's how it is, man. That's for resale. That's to get customers coming back.
And a great documentary, if you guys want to watch, about the OxyContin industry in, especially in the United States and in Florida, is OxyContin Express. It was made by, I can't remember exactly, I believe it was Vanguard, right? And it was just, Joe Rogan had them on the podcast, they talked about this documentary, and it actually ended up having some laws changed there because they had way too little regulation of, people were basically bouncing from clinic to clinic and picking up like hundreds of pills and then going back to a different state. Right, so like doctors were not like referring with other doctors at all. There was no database being kept. But so I started taking all these pills and stuff, and it was affecting me, obviously, my studies. It was affecting my day-to-day, like the way I was.
Yeah, your social life,
everything starts getting affected, and you just become very antisocial. You become a hermit, and I was over there, so I was like, okay, I gotta look for other options. So I found out from some friends that there was that the weed there, it did suck, right? And that was kind of like what I was noticing from it. But the hash that was in India, that actually came from up north from the Himalayas, was some of the best from the world. And they were saying that, if you get good hash, you can actually get some anxiety and like stress problems relieved pretty well. And I'm like, all right, let's try this out. So one of my friends introduced me to a chillum at the time, right? So we smoked hash out of this pipe, and it was insane, man. Like it was something that actually instantly gave me a state of mind that I wasn't obsessing about what's been happening in my family life and stuff.
And just to be clear, it wasn't self-obliteration. It wasn't providing you this sort of ignorance for the problem that alcohol does.
Yeah.
You were aware of the problems, but you were in a place where you could handle them better.
Yeah, and a lot of people have bad experiences on their first hash whatever, right, experience. Yeah. But I actually ended up having a really positive experience. And I was like, okay, wow, eating it can also be an option too. So I started making edibles. We started going to Subway, and you can get their cookie batter, right? And they just sell it to you in India if you just pay them enough.
Yeah.
Just be like, instead of buying the cookies, I'll pay you for how many cookies there is in there. And they'll give you the batter. So we buy the batter, and we'd go home, get some hash, mix it in some, some margarine, put it into there, and then we make these cookies. And they'd actually really helped me, right? So I started seeing that pills were actually something that I wanted to stay away from, right? And pills were something that were actually kind of messing with my body. And so I started reducing the amount of, pills that I was taking.
Yeah, synthetics.
Yeah, and then I actually, before I came back from India, I had completely stopped, right? Taking, obviously I had to too, right? I was coming back home.
Yeah, yeah. And
when I came back home, my family knew that I was cleaning up because, the withdrawals from Xanax are actually, people say, if not the same, they're actually worse than the withdrawals from alcohol, right? So after I completely kicked those, I got the shakes. I was having trouble breathing sometimes. I'd wake up in the night, couldn't sleep properly. My heart rate would be just fluctuating. I'd just be vomiting all the time, nauseous, and it was really hard to get through. But I got through that time period with marijuana too, right? It helped me to just relieve the symptoms of that dependency.
Right.
So
improve your appetite, help you relax,
with all that stuff, right? It literally brought back, everybody says okay, those are just things that people say, but I found it to be so relevant during that time when I was getting off of that dependency, right? During that withdrawal period. So marijuana was a godsend for me. And in India, they actually have we've talked about the fact that they worship Shiva, and Shiva has a connection with cannabis. Right.
He was said to be the most human of all the gods for his emotions, namely lust and anger were those that he had the most trouble dealing with.
Yeah.
So going to essentially the wise men at the time.
Yeah.
You can finish the rest of the story. I think you know it best.
I mean, he ended up having to take this poison to save this town, right? And it made him get anger and lust like crazy. So he went to these sadhus and he asked them. He said, "What can I do to calm this right now? I'm having troubles with these these demons and stuff." So they said, "Go to these hills and pick this plant, and it will actually allow you to calm yourself down and be able to live your life in more a peaceful manner and meditate."
If you want to speak a little closer to the mic. But...
So he actually ended up going to the hills and he picked the plant and he started smoking it, and then he made it I believe into I'm not sure if he made it into hash or not. I believe he just smoked it. And then
he just had a handful and he lit it on fire.
Yeah, but no, and then there's different methods that people used to have. But then the idea was that he slayed this elephant one time. That was a mad elephant. It was diseased, and he made its tusk into the first ever chillum, right? That was like the myth behind it. But
if people don't know, a chillum is a pipe that you use vertically, that's packed with hash and tobacco and a few other things. It's not just straight weed or keef or whatever.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people, if you actually have like a good quality of marijuana or something, they'll just put marijuana in there to avoid like tobacco and stuff, right?
Right.
So there's always like, and people still use chillums to this day.
Yeah.
And like as part of that ceremony, when Shiva came back to Parvati, his wife, right, they had a really positive time, obviously, with each other. They'd been away for so long, and to remember that event after like Shiva had I believe come back from a battle or something. Everybody, to remember that event and to remember Shiva, they actually drink marijuana in milk, right? And they were actually distributing that just outside of the school grounds. Like it was like there was a line where like one side was the school grounds, the other side was like there's like liquor stands and stuff, right? But like they actually had like curfews for all that stuff, but marijuana had to be allowed because in milk, right? Because it was like a part of the ceremony of the religion and stuff. So that was crazy that like it was actually something that was part of the culture.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting, the way you can see the culture dissolve the boundary of what people associate with drugs and medicine.
And people at such a young age were consuming that. It's called.
How young did you say they were? Like 7.
Yeah,
6?
7, 8, and like above, right? Like obviously, kids in India are not necessarily they'll do anything because there's not really like
it's like
a way.
Families in I'm not gonna say France specifically, but I'll be honest, it's what came to mind. Like all of our parents gave us a sip of beer when we were growing up. Yeah, you know what I mean?
See, my parents actually, they never did, so it was a big deal for them that, like, my parents, they've never drank or, like, smoked or done any type of drugs, they've never eaten meat, right? Yeah. And, like, that's something that most people can't really, like, say they've done their whole lives, right? But, my parents actually maintained that. So, to them, it was a big shock to see that I was, like, really sticking to this marijuana thing. And I find that it actually does allow me to be able to go about my day in a normal way, right? And I didn't mean to rhyme that today, right? But no, it's just marijuana in the end it's a plant, right? And soon it's gonna become legal. Everybody's gonna just not care about it, and soon I'm hoping that it's not a topic of conversation. That's what I would hope.
Controversy or no
topic of conversation, period, right? Because if people are talking about it, that means that it's something that people are like struggling or like like people don't really like people talk about alcohol, but it's not always like if somebody drinks, it's not always in a conversation about what they're talking about.
Depends where you go.
It does come up sometimes, but I'm saying like, but it people that smoke marijuana right now, it feels like, or ingest marijuana in any other ways with edibles or anything. It feels like there's an injustice with the fact that people are not allowed to consume it based on their own sovereign rights, right? So because of that,
we all know that there's so much stigma associated with it. I for one don't use it, but I still recognize its efficacy in terms of medicine and also technology. For instance, graphene, that super efficient or that super material that was being used. It's recently been found that hemp actually provides a better medium for what they're using it for. So I recognize its benefits. It's also far more efficient for use in paper. We saw why it was eliminated coming up through history in Middle America, and it being described as something that made white women want black men, and that's why they pushed away from it. There's just so much just bullshit stigma about it that we're familiar with, but I do think it's important to recognize what some of the dangers are, because if you look at something that's coming out now, which is cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, that's where young people that aren't familiar with that level of THC in the marijuana they're smoking are suddenly getting a backlash from their body. They're getting cyclical vomiting. Okay, this is something to be aware of.
Yeah, no, it was interesting. I talked to the trendies about that, right? And one of my friends' girlfriends, she actually has like that. One of the trendies' girlfriend, she actually has that problem. And she continues to use cannabis, which kind of surprised me, right? But like that was like a choice that she made, right? And that was like kind of surprising to me that but like some people, they found so much of a positive association with it that they find it hard to come off of it. So I don't know if that's dependency or not.
Yeah.
Right. But like.
Well, frankly, man, like there are tons of benefits, absolutely.
But
But
what they
there
were saying
is
was,
potential, man,
yeah,
for anything.
What they were saying though, and what he was saying, like based on his like girlfriend's experiences too, was that it's actually a very rare case, right? That like it, and I was asking because I was surprised about it, and I was kind of concerned, right? Like obviously, because I'm worried about like his health, right?
Mm.
And that's like the idea that cannabis can actually make you that sick, right? Because I was looking I was looking at the actual symptoms of that diagnosis. And they're pretty like shitty, right? Like it's like really bad sickness, right?
They're terrible.
Severe,
and frankly, though,
like abdominal pains and stuff, right? So it's like that's not something that you'd want to see somebody that you know or that you like care about like going through.
No,
right?
and I think it's important to note that the reason we're seeing it now is because we've never had the levels of THC that we had before. Marijuana didn't used to be as we've become very efficient at treating it, at helping it grow.
It's true,
and also
right?
changing the format. We have butter and so on, right?
No, it's true, but like but hash has been around for a while, right? Like hash, like not super long time, not like time of the gods. That's what I used to think before, right? But like it's been around for like 1,000 or something years, right? And they've had hash which is like concentrated, and only in certain parts of the world was it actually to the point that like it's high levels of THC.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it's like mixed with a lot of plant matter and stuff, right? But it was there was cases in the past where you actually did have high levels of THC being ingested by a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that I actually wanted to address, because like I'm not saying that like, and at the end of the day obviously like I completely acknowledge that like the doctor obviously was right in diagnosing it, and now like he feels so much better, right? So he hit the nail on the head, right? But I'm just saying that like according to what like I ended up looking up some studies, like it usually doesn't happen that frequently, but if it does happen, that is something that you have to look out for.
Yeah.
If you feel sickness and stuff, if you're like blazing and stuff or smoking, and you feel like abdominal pain and you don't feel well, then like in any case, if you kind of look at these drugs like objectively, like caffeine is also a drug. For some people, caffeine doesn't work well with them. It doesn't work well with their body's chemistry, so they don't ingest it. So if something doesn't work well with your body's chemistry, then don't put it into your body. Like that's the simple way that you should look at it. So I do get surprised sometimes, but sometimes people do have again a passion for the positive thing that they've actually gotten from that source, right? So they end up like not wanting to get rid of that in their life. So some people call that dependency, some people call that addiction, some people call that just like a passion for something. Like a lot of people have just passion for the plant.
I'm not just saying it to demonize it. I'm just saying it so people are aware. And this is sort of the theme that I want to get at for the rest of the conversation. Is there anything else you wanted to add for marijuana?
Oh, I was just just while I was at the vendor show, right? I was noticing that the type of people that were there were just family oriented people. And they were having a barbecue and stuff and just like chilling, and I ended up talking to them, and these are some of the people that are the best growers in BC, therefore, and BC's looked out in the world, so some of the best growers in the world, right? And one of them, Urban Grower, who is on YouTube as Urban Grower or Urban Remo, he was there. One of our other growers out here in BC, Johnny B, was also there, and a few other people, and they just sitting down and talking with them, having just normal conversations. It was like it was really cool. You
just find out how real these people are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it was interesting. I've run into a lot of celebrities just like through like the work of security or OD prevention that I've done and stuff, and like these guys like Cruella and Armin van Buuren, and I didn't really feel like a celebrity or a star vibe, and like some people get that like almost like fan feeling when they're around somebody. Yeah. I didn't really feel that, but like when I came around these guys, the fact that they were growing something that I feel personally passionate about now, like I don't really want to hide it anymore. I feel like it's something that like I don't want people to define me by, right, which is kind of done sometimes in cultures, right? But it shouldn't be something that I'm ashamed of either, right? And so like that's why I personally wanted to talk about it. I wanted to get it out there for the reason why that I've decided that cannabis it works for me is that I'm able to actually be active. I'm able to like go out, play sports. You've seen me before soccer games and stuff, right? and like, but like we still play, and like it doesn't bother me in any way. It doesn't like slow down my speed. I'm still running as much as I used to, like, you know, a little bit slow, obviously. Not saying I'm getting older or anything,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, it's just like, obviously I wanted to mention it because I just don't feel like I should be hiding behind, like, you know, the walls to like use that medicine, right?
Here's the thing, man.
Yeah.
If you made a decision within yourself that that's part of your identity, it's part of what you use to be you, then that's all you need to know. There's always going to be people that, for whatever part of yourself that you decide is part of your identity, they can attack that. But as long as you have made that decision to yourself, you can't take anything they say personally.
Yeah, no,
because all they can do is attack themselves.
No, exactly, and that's a wicked way of looking at when people, you know, attack you, right? And there's always trolls out there that end up saying stuff. But in the end, the thing is that, you know, I'm putting this out there as just a way of making myself a little bit more vulnerable. Because I think in the end, our society is such that we're going to move towards complete transparency, right?
Yeah.
Towards
absolutely.
nobody being able to hide anything, right? That's just the way that our culture is going now, right?
Telepathy, look at that.
And the fact that, we've talked about telepathy, the fact that there is relevance to it. Scientific research has actually gone into looking at the fact that you can feel when somebody's looking at you from the other side of the room, right?
Yeah.
They've tested that. There's actually been like some positive studies about that.
And there's so much more than that. Depending on what the person that you're with, how you feel about them, your actions will begin to synchronize. Heartbeat synchronizes, breathing synchronizes, even your thoughts to some point will synchronize. How many times have you been with a friend and they say something that you were just thinking of? This happens so much, and the people that we're around more and more, we develop a stronger and stronger connection.
Spooky science, right? That's what Einstein called entanglement and stuff, right?
Spooky action at a distance.
Yeah, and he didn't understand it either. It seemed so foreign to him that if one particle seems to observe some type of change in vibration or, you know, anything, some particle, possibly millions or
let's say trillions, because we don't know how big it is. Light years away.
Just any amount of distance away, it can actually result in that another particle having the same change in its vibration.
Instantaneously, regardless of distance.
That's what doesn't make sense. That was the idea of entanglement for Einstein, right? And
more than that, I think it was the idea that when you just observe a subatomic particle, let's say a photon, you determine its orientation.
Yeah.
You determine whether it's a particle or a wave, or a wavicle as they call it.
Yeah.
Which is just the most ridiculous thing. It's insanity. But anything else you wanted to add?
No. I mean, I think I covered everything I wanted to say about marijuana. I mean, in the end, it comes up in our conversations a lot already. And, you know, we talk about legalization because it seems like something that's pending, but, you know, I just wanted to get that out there to everybody, just so that in the end, like, everybody that I know personally that I care about already knows about this, right? But I just, like, in the end, this kind of stuff would come out, like, to the world, right? So it's like, you should be completely honest in the end, right?
And you know what's weird, man? I'm not saying that I'm not associating you with this, but when I look at, say, Republican candidates down in the U.S., what they're told when they are running for office and there's some news about them, there's a personal fault in their character, for instance. If has potential to get onto the public eye, they're told straight up to be honest about it right away, to beat everybody to the punch and to own that. And it's a useful tactic.
Move, right? That's the
it is to own your identity. To say that it is you.
That's what Rob Ford did, right?
So well, you get there and it's just, this is me. So what?
Yeah.
What can they do?
What can they beyond that, right? So like, what can they do? So it's but
you know what? Like I like to do at the beginning of podcasts, I wanted to drop some good news, and the biggest thing that struck me recently was the fact that there's been a debate going on about fast lanes and slow lanes as determined by how much you can pay for internet, right? You've seen this? There are certain companies that want to be able to provide faster service for people that pay more, essentially, and a standard service for everybody else.
Yeah.
But that is bad because obviously groups that pay more get information faster, they can make better decisions everybody else is left in the dust, right?
Yeah.
This is essentially how Rothschild made his fortune, because he funded a group of couriers to get the news to him about the Battle of Waterloo before the government forces did.
Yeah.
And through that, he was able to purchase up more than half the industries in London at the time.
Information is key, man. Like, that's what it seems to be.
But
so.
we got a huge amount of support on the internet about exactly that, and I think something over 1 million emails, something over like 6 million emails were sent to Congress down in the U.S. A similar number was sent up to our politicians here in Canada.
Yeah.
Over 100,000 or something like 80,000 calls were made to politicians and so on. Companies like Netflix, Etsy, Instagram, all of these guys stood up and supported the idea that we shouldn't have a differentiation between internet speeds. So I think that's a huge boost to see people actually participating in something that's important to them.
In information, like, spreading, right? So
Yeah.
that's, I mean, you hear about all over the world, there's people trying to specifically target certain websites that they don't want to be accessed by their population.
This is the neo-book burning of the old days. This is what this is.
Yeah, and it's something that we saw rise during our generation, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that we can kind of, appreciate, is that we saw the turn of before the internet to during that little strange transition where nobody really knew what to do with it.
And
right?
you know what? Like, democracy is a funny word. I don't think it's as effective as people keep claiming it to be.
Yeah.
As one person once said, democracy can be two wolves and a sheep deciding what they're going to have for dinner, right? So it's not an infallible system. It's what we're using right now, obviously, but that was what was interesting at the time, is you saw a mass democratization of technology, of information specifically coming out, and that was amazing at the time.
Yeah.
The actual history of the internet is fascinating, and it goes back to MK Ultra, LSD, technocrats coming up through Middle America.
Yeah.
Everybody associated with it was
The
like just
Unabomber and
amazing
stuff,
people.
right?
Yeah. Ted Kaczynski was one of the people involved in MK Ultra to begin with. So was Ken Kesey, somebody who was writing about. He wrote One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah.
But anyways, to get back on topic and the idea of information and the restriction thereof, I'm a student, and I just wanted to point out something that a lot of students are facing, particularly here in Canada and in the US and many other countries for that matter, is just how wrong it is to financially burden us in the way that we have been. I know that that's a dead horse, right? It's been beaten to death, but thinking about that on this term, all right? You're a student. Your desire is to better yourself and thereby better the world.
Yeah.
And for that, you are pummeled into the ground financially.
Mm-hmm.
It's done in such a way that if you want to pursue something, you have to support the corporations that are creating the problems we're seeing in the world.
Yeah.
That's bullshit.
And there's always one option that's always got a table when you have like the university fairs at the high schools, and that's you can join the army.
Yeah, you can do that for sure. You know what's actually weird? This may be the only time that Henry Kissinger and I actually align, but he doesn't actually agree with the concept of the military. He and I don't see eye to eye on this, because he was actually quoted of saying, well, he didn't deny saying this, but he said that military men are dumb, stupid, mindless animals.
Yeah.
And by that, I don't think he's too far from referring to the rest of the people saying that. But this is a guy that's high up there in the Trilateral Commission.
But like,
right?
at the end of the day, we still want to pay our respects to the people that have lost their lives, right?
Yeah,
like,
in no way am I saying that I'm not saying that military people are stupid.
Yeah.
That's Henry Kissinger, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't agree with the concept of violence being imposed on other people.
Yeah.
But obviously, it takes a lot of courage to want to stand up and support the people around you.
Yeah.
It's a brotherhood when you're in the military, and I think sadly a lot of people don't recognize the ramifications of what that means. A lot of people are coming back with PTSD. We're seeing the obvious result is more soldiers are killing themselves via suicide than are actually being killed by IEDs or insurgents. These are weird terms. I hate these terms, man. This weird euphemistic. They're calling them combatants now, and there's apparently a discussion going on in the philosophical community in academia about whether it's even necessary to distinguish between combatants and non-combatants. That's civilians and non-civilians, right? Which is
collateral
psycho.
damage, like, it's just a figure. It's just like a number, man.
But it's weird to see that spread, right? Because
So-
you had the idea in the military in the U.S., for instance, they developed drones, and because you can't eliminate collateral damage, they changed the policy to show that anybody in the vicinity of a terrorist was a terrorist, right?
Yeah, and that's, again, where you make those stupid little changes in law.
Yeah.
It's what Obama did during when he actually made the National Defense Authorization Act.
Yeah.
And it's like these little sneaky little, like, you know, they'll just make it pass when people's attention are
Yeah,
diverted.
it's a technique they call sundowning, and they do this a lot in finance, where they've maybe dropped a lot of money in an industry they don't want people to know about, specifically R&D or defense, homeland security, and so on. Is they'll just tack that on right at the end of the analysis period, where people don't have time to look, and if they do have time to look, they don't have enough time to change things.
Yeah.
Sundowning is a really effective technique at showing this, and more than this, it's really insane. If you studied philosophy, like, there's a lot of bullshit in philosophy. I mean, I have a lot of respect for my professor at the moment. But
Freud, I mean, we've always talked about, is somebody that has like a lot of strange aspects to his, you know, his academic.
Yeah, Freud's a weird guy, but I was actually referring to the problem I see in philosophy for the most part is that sometimes it can overcomplicate something that doesn't need to be overcomplicated. Now, that's not necessarily for me to say, because some people are fascinated by something and they just want to delve into it and just hack it to pieces, right? That's cool, that's great, but if I'm learning, I kind of like to have it streamlined. I like to do it efficiently.
Yeah.
But when we're looking at the two different forms of reasoning, there's, for instance, there's descriptive rationality and then there's there's communicative rationality, which is when we evaluate decisions or judgments that we make using other people, communicating, and that's using our truths to collectively to shave away any bullshit and to get a concrete answer. And then there's instrumental rationality, and that's where you decide the goal, and this shows you the most efficient way to reach that. So, for instance, an example of that would be cost-benefit analysis, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't tell you if it's right or wrong to decimate a country's economy so that you can come in later and introduce your industries at the detriment to the people living in whatever country.
Yeah.
It doesn't say that's right or wrong. It just says this is how you can do it efficiently.
Yeah,
you know?
Joe actually talks in that video we talked about, right, or that I showed you recently.
Yeah.
That's on the American War Machine. He talks about the idea that people in the States are, you know, they have a level, and he's from United States himself, right?
Yeah.
And he's speaking, like, you know, as part of the people, and he's
An
like,
expert
people
American.
there are actually, you know, they're so selfish for their current style of living that they don't care about the fact that, you know, to get these resources and stuff that are
That's what
to get
techniques
lithium
said, right?
and all this stuff, right?
Felipe Coronel or Immortal Techniques.
Immortal
said-
Technique, shout outs to him, right?
Yeah.
And
Well, what he said was, like, people have this mentality that the people out there, fuck them, let them fend for themselves mentality. That can't stand anymore, okay? Because even if you were using the instrumental rationality to look at how you can get as much as what you need with as little cost to you, you would eventually realize that getting as much as what you need, regardless of its effect on everything else, you would eventually kill your benefactor. Either the planet or the people around you would despise you. So you have to recognize that even through that form of thinking, you won't have a high standard of living. Even if you were to use that, and this is, I think, how it cuts two ways. If you're looking at instrumental rationality, it can also show you that the best way in which to live would be to maximize everybody's standard of living. Right? Even if you're a psychopath, you might be able to look at that and say, okay, if I learn to cooperate with everybody, we can all reach a higher standard of living, a better state of living on this planet as a whole, as fast as possible that way.
It would take a global change in, you know, perspective, though, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that
I would hope it doesn't take something like a war, even though we're seeing literally piecemeal World War III going on.
Who was it that said that it would take like an alien in presence? It was some president. I can't remember who. I think it was Hoover. No, I can't remember who. But like basically, he was stating that in the time
Might have been Gerald Ford, I'm not sure.
Yeah, you can find this speech too on the internet. He states that the only thing that it seems like that would actually bring the world together as
would
one
be an
race
outside threat.
would be an outside threat outside of our race,
Yeah.
our human race.
Yeah, and this is again something and this is a really good theme, because when I look at information again and we look at how we can maintain ourselves, because we're always going to be growing, we're always going to be learning,
Yeah.
and as much as we can learn to understand ourselves and to live within a balance, we can live in the best way possible that way.
Yeah.
The trouble is, there are so many things that we're not aware of that are affecting that balance.
Yeah.
When you go back to the way.
Sorry, I mistyped the link. I was just posting the link. Sorry.
Yeah, it's cool.
Keep talking, yeah.
But anyways, when you look at the way information is controlled and you go all the way to the top, it isn't just people that I feel we're dealing with. I, for one, feel very strongly about the extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional being situation that's going on. And that's something I highly recommend people look into. People look at it and they go, okay, right off the bat, a lot of that's just hocus pocus, it's media, it's whatever. Unless you've had a personal experience seeing a UFO in the sky or something you can't explain, people are really dismissive of this. You know, even now, just for the fact of me saying ETs, I think a lot of people might have just written me off.
Yeah,
right?
That's how you lose the audience, right?
Yeah,
so,
but fuck that. I don't care, man.
Yeah.
Go and research it,
Yeah.
alright? Simply for the fact of me emphasizing it to this point, I would hope that it would resonate with enough people to say, okay, he's making himself look crazy, maybe there's something to it.
Yeah.
Because
it's just unfortunate that the figureheads that they put in front of these ideas are just
ancient
so
aliens,
shitty, man.
There's a reason why
Ancient
they do
aliens
that.
and Stephen Greer, right?
Yeah,
You know Dr. Greer, right? So
that guy,
who's
there's
actually
something-
ahead of the Disclosure Project, right?
There's something wrong with that, okay? Because while I agree with the concept of disclosing it, it's not for any president or prime minister to do that.
Yeah.
That simply isn't their place. For one thing, they don't have a handle on the situation if you actually research it.
Yeah.
And secondly, they don't speak for us as a whole. That is a facade. That's not how things go. You should reach that conclusion through your own effort, essentially.
Yeah.
And but I'm doing a lot of reading lately on I finished reading Rick Strassman's book, the DMT, the Spirit Molecule, right?
Yeah.
And in it, he actually goes into the ideas behind when people are what's the term when people are kidnapped by ETs?
They're abducted?
Abducted, right. The abduction phenomenon. He posits that it's due to a random fluctuation in the levels of your DMT, but he can't account for the fact that there's a uniformity to what people are seeing. So I'm saying that people see the same things when they're experiencing this.
Yeah.
Whether it's the same beings, the same technology surrounding them, the same themes, it's all there. Now, it goes down as well with something like LSD, because people that have never studied Hebrew, for instance, can see Hebrew symbols, or they might see Sephiroth, the 10 manifestations of God.
Yeah.
These things are all entailed in the Kabbalah, but if you've never studied it before, and it's coming to you through something like LSD,
it might be perceived differently.
It might be perceived differently, but if you can cross-reference the information with somebody else who's done that, you can recognize that there's actual uniformity in the unconscious collective that we're all pulling from the ether, right? A lot of people posit the idea that everything that we've created, movies, drawings, the speeches that we have, every symbol that we've created actually is being pulled from a real archetype out there. So if you imagine, if we go back to the multiverse theory and you look at the myriad of universes, there is a living example for everything we've shown here in this reality, right? But going back to this whole ET thing,
on a quantum theoretical level, right? We'll say, right?
What, ET's on a quantum theoretical
level?
No,
that we actually have every possibility, or everything we've recorded being an actual reality in every instance.
Yeah.
Sorry, Joe actually talked about this, this idea, he actually had a show where they would give people challenges and go out and have people go out into the real world and do these challenges.
Fear factor.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't Fear Factor. It was this other one, and the challenge was that you had to go out and you had to get people to give a fake news story saying that they'd seen a UFO to the media, in front of a camera.
Yeah.
Right? And basically, they were surprised by how easy it was to get people to just bullshit.
Yeah.
Right? If you just told people that they get a chance to be on camera and that their name would be mentioned,
Yeah.
they love the idea to go home and be able to record it that night,
Well, man, like,
show it to their friends.
if you look on YouTube, like,
And they all
there
describe
are
the
so
same
many-
imagery though, man. That's
Yeah.
the fucked up thing.
Yeah, and you know what, man? Here's
Triangles,
the
like
thing though,
lights.
like you can develop your intuition to feel what's true and what's not. But other than that, man, you're right. When you look on YouTube, you look at how many fake videos there are. But not just that, but everything about
If you
people
see
saying like
enough-
the megalodon is real. You know, like Sasquatch. There's so much of that. The internet's
Hey,
inundated with this
Sasquatch,
shit.
man, there's a Sasquatch Provincial Park in Harrison. Okay?
Yeah.
So it's a part of our province. Don't you say
Dude,
that
it's a part of our psyche. We're always, even if it doesn't exist, it might as well
I have
be
friends that
real.
go squatching, okay?
Dude,
So
I've heard
Pacific
people
Northwest-
tell stories about actually seeing one, about it, hearing it make it scream, about it throwing boulders. I've heard it all, and I'm not about to say that it's not real.
Just to be clear, Jane Goodall, who's actually researched and was part of like, the whole Gorillas in the Mist, I believe, movie, right? And she,
I can't verify that. But
but she writes, she's done just a crazy array of different research on primates and apes and gorillas, and she's lived with them for long periods of time.
yeah, I have to
she-
commend her for that, man, because
she's played
frankly, I'm
basketball.
scared to death of.
Like there was like a picture, I can't remember what the famous picture was, but like it was like her like playing with the
I would
girls.
let the apes win, man. I would
Yeah.
let them win basketball. If you've seen what they do, oh man, that's another story. But
Dude, that sounds a little racist. No.
okay, you took it to that level. But okay, no, this what I wanted to say about this phenomenon is there's three sides to this. If we want to make it really, really broad, okay? The one side is, well, that might be four. There's the denial side that goes, all right, it's all bullshit.
Yeah.
What we're seeing in the skies are government aircraft. That raises question, but whatever. It's we're alone on the planet for all we know. Then there's the idea that they are real, and if they're visiting us, it's all lovey-dovey. It's fantastic. They're not interfering with us because, like a petri dish, Earth is still coming out of the chrysalis. We're still developing into the galactic species, right? And they're not going to interfere with our development because that would invalidate it, right? So there's that idea. And then there's the idea that there's they're out there, but they're not interacting with us. They're light years away, and we're never going to communicate to them within this lifetime. And
But
then
now
there's
we
the
have
fourth.
FTL, right? We have faster than light travel, right? So
Right, and if you actually go and look at crop
NASA's-
circles, or you look at the signals that NASA's received and interpreted, not just NASA but every other group, there's a country in Europe, or more specifically a town, that's actually set up cameras because of their high level of UFO sightings,
Yeah.
that have captured some really ridiculous stuff that I'm not gonna say what it is, but I can't even pronounce the name of the town, which is pretty sad, but they have been experiencing. If you just type in European town UFOs stationary camera, you'll find this place. But then the fourth view is that they are interacting with us, and they're not entirely benevolent. In fact, some of them have very negative designs for human beings as a whole. Essentially, we're looked at as a food source. Now that's sounds like, oh yeah, David Icke, reptilians, blah blah blah. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I don't think it's ridiculous to say that if there are ETs interacting with us, it's not okay to assume that it's all beneficial. It's all a positive thing. I do not think that's the case. Now, going back to the spirit molecule, people's experiences with extra-dimensional beings, and if you want, read the book, people are absolutely sure that what they're seeing is not a hallucination. This isn't them meeting parts of their subconscious. It's a more lucid version of reality than they're familiar with coming back to here.
Yeah.
But that's for the people that have either done DMT to decide, and for the viewers to actually go and research. I, for one, feel that they're not lying when they say that what they're experiencing is real, given my history.
Can you remember that? Before I forget something, right?
Yeah, hit it.
Yeah, the fact that like people actually, oh man, what was I gonna say? Because actually,
We're talking about DMT and extra-dimensional beings. And
yeah. So basically, you were saying that after the nuclear tests happened,
yeah,
right?
1947.
Basically, when that happened, and that was like the fact that the butterfly effect kind of happening in the cosmos, that something that big happening here going out to the world was noticed, and that people started, that's when UFOs started, kind of the number of UFO sightings started going up,
Yeah.
and all these things, right? So wouldn't that kind of imply the idea that our idea of war and of like, killing, mass amounts of people for our own benefit was an alien idea to the rest of the people out there?
Not necessarily. It's a concern for some, but as I understand it, it was also a point of recognition that the civilization has developed to the point where it can split the atom. That is the key issue, the splitting of the atom. Fusion's okay according to them, but fission is not. The splitting actually affects the cosmos, and I'm not sure of the actual ramifications, but this is one of the reasons that they came down. It wasn't specifically to say, like, this is terrible, it's almost like a child with a loaded gun now, we have to intervene. Obviously, we didn't see that, so that's not the case. There's different stuff at work here, and if you actually look into the history with JFK and so on, multiple presidents have actually been interacting with ETs, and the conversation essentially is, you can disarm yourself and we can contribute to your development beneficially through your agreement. And
what was the evidence that the presidents were interacting?
There's if you look at Henry Truman, for instance,
yeah.
he was there was an official statement given by his administration saying that he was called to it wasn't Dulce or some other place in the U.S., that he was called away from his work to have an emergency root canal done.
Yeah.
And what instead happened, according to people that worked with him, is that he was actually taken to an air base to meet with the tall whites, the Zeta Reticulans, to discuss something to do with interplanetary exchange.
So, but like the official statement was that he was doing something else, and he was actually like said to have been doing that.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the thing again, is that what people are gonna attack.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
people can attack that for sure.
Yeah, but you have to like. I'm not trying to halt you in your argument, right? But the thing is that like when we bring up issues like this, a lot of people do end up being like, okay, look, I'm gonna end up like going to Google and I'm gonna research this, right? And when it comes to stuff like that, unfortunately, like there's been a lot of people trying to show lately, like people like Joe, like they're trying to bring this topic up in a more more appropriate setting, but still people always end up saying, where's the evidence, the actual evidence?
And look,
right?
I can 100% appreciate that.
Yeah.
And for the people that make it beyond just saying that's bullshit, refuting it outright, for the people that go onto Google and they're looking into it, if they get that far, congratulations. Whatever answer you come away with, fantastic. Stick with your guns.
Yeah.
If you feel intuitively that that's yours, that's fine. But here's the thing. This is one thing I want to make clear, all right? Gravity is still a theory. None of us have ever seen the direct evidence to show that that is the reality, but all of us, because we feel it tangible, buy it, right?
No, but you can see the acceleration of an apple.
You can see the acceleration, right? But it's still a theory.
Yeah, but the theory is essentially like the apple falling.
Yeah,
right?
That's what I'm saying. It's tangible, right?
Yeah.
But another example, for instance, television. You and I can't describe to one another how a television works. We don't know the actual dynamics. I can't show you the blueprints of a television and explain to you why it is that that's working. You and I simply don't know that.
Yeah.
We take it for granted because it's a tangible reality.
But you can see the television though, right?
Yeah, again, you can see that.
People just want to go based off of their senses, what they can see.
Right.
And now,
but no, we're still based on surface impressions.
Yeah.
We are. Okay.
It's unfortunate, and I'm playing obviously like devil's advocate.
No. I'm not saying you're wrong to do that. I'm just saying to the people that maintain that position that there is information that we all take in that we don't ask for much explanation, all right? When you look at what's being done in the Middle East, right, on the news, what actually happens in the news is they don't have enough time to provide you with information that clashes with the official story. And because it doesn't fit in that time frame, many people, at least prior to all the information and sharing going on today, bought it at face value, okay? That stuff goes on. People buy it, and to an extent, some of the information can be true.
Yeah.
It has to have true a half-truth involved in order for anybody to accept it. That's how disinformation works. But for now, just given the state of things, we have to rely on our intuition and learn to trust, because there are people out there in the positions that are putting themselves in a position that would otherwise be insane to anybody if they were in a position of power. Paul Hellyer, Clifford Stone, anybody working in the
So Paul
FSA.
Hellyer, ex-Canadian defense.
He was a defense minister,
minister.
ex-Canadian defense minister, who
Yeah.
goes on to speak about what's happening.
Outspoken activist, right?
Yeah.
Said he actually had a UFO sighting himself in his backyard on his lakeside house, whatever, right?
Mhm.
So the thing is that I'm not saying that all, but when it comes to stating things like, oh, the presidents have met or conversed with, extraterrestrials, like if we say that, then we gotta like attach like a video with it, right? To actually show that there's actually been like interaction, right? Because then, or else people, that's the power.
Yeah.
That's what will actually cripple us too, right? And it's cool that we have this now, but it's like, I'm not saying be reserved in what we say, but it's like, now it's like, everything that we say, it's kind of cool that people will Google it, right?
And that's the thing, man. Like, I'm not gonna sugarcoat what I feel is true.
It's not to sugarcoat
No.
but then it's have been back upable. That's the thing.
Sure. Obviously, I wouldn't say it unless I was confident enough in it. I do my best to try and preface it if there's not a lot of information there. I would hope, though, that if the people get as far as to go and research it themselves, that they can use their intuition in hearing this, because there are things happening that we don't have direct evidence of, and nevertheless we are affected by it. This is why I feel compelled to share the information.
Yeah.
I can only allow people to do with it what they will, but obviously this is important enough to me that I feel I have to share it.
Yeah.
There are things going on that are far beyond what we deal with on a daily basis, and it's too important to me to just stay silent about it.
Yeah, but again, people are gonna say they don't see anything, and that's the problem with if you don't disclose information about war, if you don't have proper media coverage, people will not care about it, right? And then you can't expect people to actually listen to it, because unfortunately, man, there has been just so much bullshit put out.
Honestly, man,
right?
I can recommend books for people to read. I can recommend YouTube videos. There's so much inundated with it. But the only thing I can strongly recommend people do in this situation is to do your best to develop your intuition, to try and look at the information with suspended judgment until you've taken it all in.
And it's unfortunate, though, that most of the prominent resources that are available to people, the internet, and then the extension being Google, Wikipedia, these type of search engines and these type of databases, those are actually not good sources of information for like unbiased information, right?
No, definitely not.
And Google is actually a really bad search engine, right? But like as far as actually databasing the whole internet and stuff, right?
Frankly, I get the impression that just by the act of adjusting the angle of the aperture through which you're seeing the world, you have biased the information that you're pulling in.
Yeah.
Every single story is biased through your decision to tell it. But that being said, there are better sources than others, but they all depend on you as an individual.
Bias is everywhere, though, right? And Abby Martin actually talks about social related bias, right? The fact that if you actually surround yourself with like-minded individuals all the time, which people try to strive to do, they're like, oh man, all my friends are just like me, right? They think just like I do. But if you surround yourself with like-minded individuals, we have friends that are against marijuana, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like, Mike and stuff, right? Like, he's against the idea of marijuana, and that's something that's always on the table. It's, it's not always discussed, but it's always there as like, it's a topic that we have different opinions on, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, we have, like, the problem is Abby Martin was saying that and again, I'm going to keep quoting her because you should definitely check her out. She's on RT News, and she reports, if you can just follow her on Twitter, Twitter is her Twitter is incredible. She's covers everything so well.
She just seems like one of the coolest people.
Yeah, you did a weird thing with your mouth there. When you said that.
That's how cool I think she is, man. I think she covered the idea of what's going on in Gaza
Yeah.
beautifully.
And she was saying about bias and stuff. Just try to surround yourself with not like-minded individuals so that you actually get different perspectives. Even if you clash a little bit, you're going to actually progress more intellectually.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at that example, right?
Echoes, right?
Let's say you're a white supremacist.
Yeah.
Okay, you're a white supremacist. You're surrounding yourself with white supremacists. How are you going to grow as a person if you're only ever hearing that every other race is inferior to white people?
But even in a positive manner, if you are a person who is, for example, just smokes marijuana, right? Then you only hang around people that smoke marijuana.
Yeah.
That's not how it should be, right? And that's what some people end up doing. But you should actually go out, and that's what's cool about these chats and stuff, is that you do see people from all different types of the world where they actually do also do that. But the thing is, you should actually challenge yourself to go out and find people who are, against the idea even, right?
Man, I think
those
it's
are the
still
people that are
because
going to challenge you to think of outside of your box.
I think,
Right,
man, we're doing remarkably well as a species, given all the stuff that's going on. We're doing remarkably well at adjusting to the weird social circumstances that we find ourselves in.
Yeah.
Like, it's all happening so damn fast. It's weird as fuck what's happening, okay? But besides the fact that we're all trying our best to come to terms with the weird stuff going on in our heads and in our bodies and so on, and still trying to relate to one another, we're doing remarkably well. Because we're all weird. Let's be really honest about that.
Yeah.
We all have our weird idiosyncrasies, and to me, the people that are the most inconspicuous in a profoundly sick society are the ones to look out for, alright? So to me, the people that try and set the trends and so on, I try to keep my... Yeah, and
you see that with presidents all the time, right?
For someone to call you normal in a really sick society, that means you have to start working on yourself, in my opinion. But the idea that...
It's crazy.
Yeah, right? I think we really are doing well, and I think it's just hard for people to try and expose themselves to one another. We're doing it bit by bit, but being as vulnerable as we feel now, it's really hard to share ourselves like that. I mean, I would love to see a time when we're completely transparent about the information, but it's coming apart in pieces now.
Yeah.
Piece by piece we're showing. We're making big steps right now sharing this information because this is a part of us. This is like, I can easily be refuted by tons of people for saying what I did about ETs. So many people can just say, this guy's nuts, he's stupid. I mean, he's one of these people that are so open-minded that his brain's just going to fall out, right?
But I mean, in the end,
Sorry, that sounded like a really backhanded, self-congratulating... David, what's David Brent from The Office?
The awkward Office, the British one.
That is so cringeworthy.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, like, we just have to. In the end, we want to encourage people to research, right? And if some of the statements that we make are not really like able to be researched, then like that kind of goes
and
into
take our word for it,
right? No, but like that's why we try to state people, like, before we actually state these ideas, we try to bring forth like actual a reputable resource, or a reputable person that can actually, like, Paul Hellier was a great resource, and I'm so glad that he actually came out and talked about.
And Clifford Stone, check out Clifford Stone if you're interested in that.
And every single like rock artist, every rock artist like sings some song about extraterrestrials and stuff, and just.
Or just cross-reference it with your own experience. Look at, I don't know, a lot of people have ghost stories, right? No, forget that. Everybody's got a ghost story, right? What proof do we have in the greater society to show that those experiences are real? But to the individual who has seen a ghost, they don't need that information out there, right?
Those shows are so bad.
Those shows are... They're terrible.
It's like
terrible.
What was that? What was that?
It was kind of a...
It was a tink. It was a tink. It was a metallic tink.
Yeah.
Right? Wait, we don't have any... It's all wood house, man.
I want to see one of those shows without the music, man. For that matter, I want to see one of those cooking shows without music.
Laugh line, like...
That show is so... sorry. I could make a lot of people mad with my opinion on that show, too. But I won't, because...
You know what? We're against the Big Bang Theory. Oh, no, that's not what I want. No, I'm just kidding. We're against the show, The Big Bang Theory, because recently I have noticed that it's not actually funny if you take the laugh lines out, and without actual like telling you when to laugh. The writing is actually pretty bad, and it's unfortunate because I used to watch the show and I just kind of fell into it because Joe said it fools dumb people into thinking that they're smart. by like coding it with smartness, but the actual humor is not smart humor.
No, I mean, I haven't heard Joe speak on that, so I don't know. But personally,
Joe's
the way I
God.
see it, okay, yeah. No, you're not too far from that according to the Hindu perspective on things. The idea of Brahma subdividing into all the other forms we see.
Whoa, Graham, don't spill too much knowledge on people here.
Cat's out of the bag, man. But no, the way I see it, it's taking who you might consider intelligent in a society and putting them, pigeonholing them, and more than that, it's almost parading these ideas that they're looking at, like string theory and so on, as if it's scientific fact. So too with the Big Bang Theory. Even in the theme, I think there's so much bullshit there that you can't verify. I mean,
it's like, but it comes back to the God particle and the Higgs boson.
I know, and a lot of people are gonna go like, Graham, stop being stupid. It's just a TV show.
Yeah.
I can't, because I have a problem with bad programming.
And people watch that. People that we know watch that, and that's what ends up like bothering me. Is when I know that my mom's watching something, and it's just like it bothers me now that my mom still watches the Canucks.
Yeah.
And then during like I sometimes wear the Canucks hats and stuff just because I like retro logos and stuff. I like easy, simple logos that people have made popular. So it just kind of sticks in my head. But the Canucks now during all these strikes, I saw that they don't give a damn about the fans, man. It's about making more and more money, right? And I understand that NHL players don't get paid as much as other sports leagues, right?
Yeah.
It's definitely a concern, but it's God damn, man,
really.
they don't
shouldn't really register very high.
They still make a lot of money, right? And their lives are hard though. Like if you look at Eric Lindros, he gave his body.
Dude, hockey is
so
a crazy culture.
Yeah.
The people in it, man.
But you gotta admit though, Stanley Cup playoffs, high action, it's pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean anything with that amount of pageantry is just a spectacle, and it's interesting to see in itself.
You love pageants. You're a pageantry kind of guy.
Yeah, alright. Whatever.
Yeah. We went and watched that Floyd Mayweather fight today, and a lot of the people that were watching it with us, Johnny and his friends and stuff, they were watching boxing for the first time.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Hey, this is actually kind of interesting because there's a high level of art, right?" And that's what it was. You could appreciate the art behind it. It wasn't just guys beating the shit out of each other. It was okay, look, you can see, and they were analyzing it during the commercials and stuff.
Yeah, because Johnny's into wrestling, right?
Johnny, we wrestle all the time, right? And I beat him pretty much every time. So every time I beat him every time. So Johnny, and he claims that
Say it a third time.
No, he claims that he can take me down and stuff. And we had this I
got to admire Johnny for that, man. Johnny just keeps trying. One day he will.
Johnny Cage. No, but Johnny Fong. Shout out to Johnny Fong. Shout out to Jamie Holtzeg, who's definitely going to watch this podcast. You're my homie, and you watch all these podcasts. Thank you for tuning in and shit. And you're probably somewhere. He travels the world making water slides.
Where did he go now? Idaho or something?
Yeah, something like that. I don't know Idaho, right? But he's traveling the world making water slides.
Yeah.
And he just lives a life of a movie character.
He's sort of like a celebrity, except he does nothing to do with cameras, and he builds water slides.
My friends, the stories relating to Jamie, they don't believe them. A lot of the times that they're like, this shit's just too ridiculous. There's no way any of that shit's true. But Jamie is an interesting character. He proves again that your oldest friends are your weirdest friends. And I love the guy to death, but we will compete to the day that we die. That seems to be the relationship that we had.
I really what's gonna happen when you guys have a contest to see who's gonna die first, man?
We've talked about that. We said when we get to a certain age, when we don't want to get vegetative, we're just gonna both be on an island, right? And there's gonna be little sites. There's gonna be little sites that are set up with like markers, and you might get food at one site, right? Or you might get
So you're just gonna have a 2-person game of Survivor, pretty much, right?
And then and whoever kills the other guy gets all of his assets, and not gets his ass not like that, but gets all of his assets and lives on and lives a little bit more of a comfortable life.
Yeah.
Right? So
there's just one thing I want to iterate before we pull this to a close, because we've been jawing for a long time. The one thing I want to say, I can be opinionated and I can be really critical of a lot of things. I do my best to work on that. We both have our flaws, but at the end of the day, we're all just trying to come together to create the best world possible in the best way that we know.
Yeah.
And I want to extend my hand to people now and say that I'm willing to do this with you.
Yeah.
Regardless of who you are, what you've done, where you come from, I'm here to help make things as best as I can.
Yeah.
We together are trying to do that here.
We try to help as many people in whatever way we can,
Yeah.
right? And we're not trying to like.
We're not
successful, right? We're not really successful all the time.
Yet.
Right? When we can, we try to help people, and like we hope in the future we're able to have the means to help more people, right? That's
and
what
I think we will, but I mean, to any of our viewers now that might feel like we're removed or we're on a pedestal or whatever, whatever your impression of us is, I just want to say that we're within reach, and for whatever you guys need, we're all trying to deal with this, and we want to help. We want to help make it an easy transition. For whatever that means for you, I hope you just take that as goodwill from us.
Yeah, goodwill from good news, and
from the good fellas.
Honestly, like every single view that we get, thank you so much to the trendies that actually tuned in, right? But every single view that we get, we end up being shocked. Like when we see a view count on UStream, or we're actually gonna throw this onto YouTube now, right? Because we can download it and throw it on there.
So then I'd like to say to the people that have subscribed on the YouTube channel, thank you so much to every one of you. It's like Sav was saying, it's really ridiculous to see that even one person has subscribed to us.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of love from all the people that have watched our podcast. We're gonna get more of a rhythm, and it felt really good today because like it felt like we kind of humanized ourselves a little bit more.
Yeah.
Right, but like. Yeah, peace and love, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will come back at you soon with more action and more good news.
All the best, folks.
Peace and love.